Welcome to Smiley's. We are serving a large glass of questionable choices with a dash of indignation. Please join us today, where we are discussing the adjunct, the woman, depends on who you ask, Lorn. Hello, Maura.
Hi, Lee. Thanks for the intro. So, today we are going to discuss just the character Lorn, just in her appearance in Gardens of the Moon. So, spoilers are limited to Gardens of the Moon alone. This is the smallest spoiler episode we have done so far. So, because we are titling this as a woman named Lorn, do you want to explain, Lee, that why we have chosen this name and we are not just saying Adjunct Lorn?
So, repeatedly throughout the book, there is a present conflict within Lorn and on the external appearance of Lorn. So, her introduction, the name Adjunct is dropped like 4 or 5 times before we even get her name. She goes to the captain in Kokan and she says, "Okay, hi Adjunct, I'm the hello Adjunct, as you command Adjunct." And then when they happen upon a scene, she says, "I am named Lorn." Later, we have her inner conflict, in which she describes 2 parts of herself. We'll get to all of that in a minute. One of them being the adjunct as a faceless tool, and the other being the woman that once was Lorn. And so, we are mostly discussing the conflict between these two. The woman named Lorn and the adjunct Lorn, and comparing and contrasting in trying to understand how the character progresses through the book.
Yeah, because the adjunct part of Lorn is not really the interesting part, right?
It depends on who you... it interests me.
Interesting in the sense, it's a static character. She's a tool of the Empress and she remains one. Whereas the woman, she's the one who is in conflict, right? So that's what we're trying to explore. Ultimately, the woman lost to the adjunct. And yeah, that was sad to read. When you read Gardens of the Moon for the first time, what did you think of Lorn specifically?
Honestly, Lorn was probably in my top 3 favorite characters, and I was super bummed out that she died.
You were? Nice.
Lorn's death was like the first time I looked at Mount and said, "Oh, this is not going to be one of those series, is it?" I remember audibly saying that.
Okay.
Oh, it's like, it hit me hard. I don't want to say didn't like it, but I didn't expect it.
Yeah, I was sad too. Both Lorn and Talk, both the deaths felt extremely pointless to me.
Poor Talk.
Yeah, I remember. Lorn hit me hard because, I really liked her character.
Because you have certain preconceived notions about these characters, right? The tools of the evil Empress. And her interaction with Baron, her interaction with Honor's Tula, we'll get to Dudrek, Tyson, all those people, and it kind of leaned to, because of her inner conflict, that she will eventually turn tables and change sides and join the bridge burners and Ganos and stuff. And then she dies, and you're like, hang on, this isn't how this is supposed to go. You may not have had these notions. I did, and I'm talking from my experience. Please go on.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying I tend to read too fast to predict what happens next and all, So, I don't take a minute to think about what I'm reading. But I was reading this interesting article. I'll probably put a link in the description, but in which, in a typical fantasy novel, this is how they were set up, right? Ganos and Lorn from the beginning. This would have been like the power couple, right? She takes him under her wing and either they grow into somebody, they start collaborating with each other and, oppose the evil Empress or something. Or there is a conflict between them and at the end he kills her and, it's like a fight between the Empress and Opon through his sword. It could have gone in so many other predictable ways, and her dying by the roadside is probably the least predictable way she could have died. Do you want me to run through her, her background?
So before we get to that, you mentioned an article. First of all, I seem to recall that article says that those plot beats that you mentioned, them fighting and Opon intervening, and that would suck. That would be terrible. I think article mentioned that specifically. I wanted to mention another article.
I think both articles were written by the same person.
Maybe. I don't remember reading the second one, but probably. Because every article on that side was written by the same person. So, an article about 2 characters and comparing them in Gardens of the Moon, both of which are strikingly similar, but also quite different in Lorn and Sorry. We're not going to get into that because that article is amazing, and I highly suggest everyone read that. I will pull a few things from there because I think they're interesting. I think the points raised are very good. We won't be using that article word for word because you should read it. It's very good. But I will take a few things from there. I will highlight a couple of things in relation to other characters and Lorn to compare. And I think that's it for now. I think we can get to her background. I don't have anything else to mention about the article.
Are you sure?
Nothing that comes short of plagiarism because, like I said, just read the articles. We'll get into them later, but seriously, go and read them. They're very good and they're probably better than anything I can say.
Okay. Right, so what do we know about Lorn?
I will leave this to you because very clearly you are better.
Yeah, she grew up in Malaz Isle at the poorest section of the island, which is the Mouse Quarter. And she apparently had parents and a brother. And the turning point in her life comes when she's aged 11, when some riots break out in Mouse Quarters, which is directly because the Claw Commander and acting regent, but basically it is Surly who has taken up the name Lasine, has ordered a whole cadre of mages. So Lasine has basically sent a whole cadre of mages because she is anti-magery basically. She just wants only regulated magic to be used. So she has sent a whole cadre of mages and things have become little hairy and there has been some indiscriminate killing and burning going on, which we see in the prologue. And we have no idea that at the same time Ganos Paran is overlooking this column of fire at the Mouse Quarter. That place also has Tattersail and Lorn at the same place, right? So it's a very interesting prologue, and I've told you many times that I love the prologue because it sets up so many of these things in such a short span of time. Right, so what happens is because I think immediately following the riots, she is taken over by the Claw, which is described as a cult in this book. I think further on we're not told that they're a cult or anything, but it's quite clear that this is a cult run by Lasine. So she's taken over and she begins training to be an assassin. Her family is relocated somewhere and they all die. And this information is hidden from her for quite a few years, right? So she grows up thinking they're fine and becomes a Claw. And when the story opens, I think she's around age 20, almost the same age as Ganos. And I'm just speculating here, but what I think is Lasine probably manipulated her because she knows that Lorn dislikes mages. So she wanted her own personal mage killer, and maybe that's why she was given the Ototoral sword and made into an adjunct. So I'm just basing this because, even at the age of 20, though she started her Claw training at age 11, Lorn already is unresponsive to magic, right? So Denul magic does not work on her. So she can't heal by magic and she can only heal by mundane measures. Based on this, I'm thinking that she has been trained to be an a mage killer, an Ototoral sword wielder, and an adjunct. All these things she has been, picked specifically to be turned into this by Lasine, at a quite young age. Right. So next, when we see her through others' POV, we are told repeatedly that she is just an extension of the Imperial will. Right. So that was her background. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. What I have to add is the riots in the Mouse Quarter were actually instigated precisely because of the outlawry of magery. And originally, there was a mage cadre dispatched to put down the riots peacefully as it can be. And then we cut to the prologue, and there has been also control. And the two characters that are in the know, which we know later to be Whiskey Jack and Fiddler, talk about this. Fiddler more specifically, because Whiskey Jack is very cagey with information. Fiddler insinuates that this quote-unquote loss of control of mages is orchestrated, is purposeful.
Yeah. And
then Surly walks into the scene. So,
Yeah.
I wonder who did this. The point is, this is not an army putting down a revolt. This is a purge. It's a very deliberate purge. And we actually see this from many different POVs later, not just in this book, but in general, we revisit this scene a few times. And the common denominator almost always is unmitigated destruction from mages that are supposed to be competent. They're excused somewhat by saying that it's their first posting, and then all their soldiers were sent to rein them in. We learned that Dujek was later dispatched to the Mouse to rein Tattersail in. But the common denominator is magery went awry, and the irony, obviously, of mages destroying outlaw mages and then creating the adjunct that is anti-mage entirely is not lost on anyone. Moreover, Ganos in the prologue is 12, which puts him 9 years later to 21, which means he is older than Lorn.
What does 1 year matter? Oh god.
It is 1 year, but it doesn't show. It doesn't show that Ganos has understood. Lorn has grown up way faster than Ganos has.
True.
More on her background is her parents were dispatched and family, and her brother, to the caves in Malas Isle where they died of disease, ostensibly because they weren't looked after, because they were outlaws, And Lorn goes to great lengths to describe that she still remembers the looks on her parents' face when they were covered in blood, and the shock and the numbed realization that blood was not their own, that they were sheathed in other people's blood, and then they were taken to the caves and died. So they were not the targets. They were unrelated collateral damage. They were collateral damage. And it shows that whoever ordered this doesn't seem to care. And yet, one curious thing I found is, we can weigh on this in on this later, but I think we talked about this, is Lorn blames Tattersail for what happened. Now, yes, Tattersail did lose control, ostensibly, and she claims to have lost control. Tattersail didn't order the purge. Tattersail was simply sent in along with a host of other mages. Someone else ordered that purge. And yet we never see, and Lorn ostensibly probably knows this by now. She's been in Lassine's employ for 8 years, 9 years. She would know, and she never does anything about it.
Yeah, I think that's where, the word indoctrination comes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cult, right? So Lassine has taken her under her wing, and the child Lorn, imagine, she knows nothing else. All she knows is to be a claw, and the only person probably who takes care of her is Lassine. We find out the claw structure and all that, but it's not very clear here. But it seems like Lorn and Lassine are in step, right? As an adjunct, she is completely in step with the Empress's will.
Mm-hmm.
There is really no split between their ways of thinking or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So she has molded her exactly according to what she wants, the Empress. That's where I think, her whole personality has been blocked. She can't really blame Lassine because she feels she is just an extension of Lassine. How can she blame herself, I don't know. This is all just extremes of indoctrination and recruiting children into the army and things like that.
Where else do we see that in Gardens of the Moon?
In Gardens of the Moon?
Mm-hmm.
We see Sorry.
Exactly. Obviously, the article I mentioned earlier throws this comparison because that's kind of the point of the article. But Tillion's, which ostensibly she was possessed precisely because she learned the name, but anyway, Cotillion, the rope, he uses Sorry to take down Lassine. And due to external factors like Briga or like Anomander forcing the rope outside of Sorry, she's mostly free and still maintains part of her innocence, but it's very clear that it's not the Fisher girl acting. It's a god, Tillion. If not for those external factors, Sorry would remain under possession for an unknowable amount of time until she's killed, possibly, by Lorn, which is part of the plan. Now, in a metaphorical sense, you can view this as the god, quote-unquote, telling the Fisher girl that she's his now. She belongs to him. He doesn't because, well, she's her whatever semblance of a personality she might have had is obliterated, only really comes back up when certain trigger words are mentioned, like Sia at some point.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the god is in full control. There is no dominant part of the Fisher girl in Sorry. Lorn does not have this. Lorn is the child that you mentioned, the innocent scarred child that we actually see emerge in Itkokan when they wade through the village that is massacred. And they go down to the shoreline and say, I want names of all those who enlisted. Yada yada. Paran later recalls that scene and thinks that this is the only time he's seen Lorn act in any capacity as, well, what her age would dictate, as a young woman who just turned adult, who just turned 18. As you mentioned earlier, there is speculation that Lorn has been indoctrinated personally by Lassine, and I wonder if such a, again, this is mostly taken from the article, verbatim, I wonder if such a scene existed for Lorn. That's a pun. I wonder if such a similar scene existed with Lorn, where Lassine took her to the side and said, okay, from this day onward, you're going to be the Imperial Adjunct. You're going to be the extension of my will. You are mine. It's not very far-fetched to think that, to see that. Because, as you said, we know that Claw is a cult. We know there is some semblance of indoctrination. We see that in Lorn. But Lorn is also a special case. I want to touch on this a bit before we move on. We see a lot of claws in Guardians of the Moon. And virtually all of them are very different.
How many do we see?
At least 4.
Oh, 4.
We see Lorn, obviously, who is the adjunct but also has claw training.
Yeah.
We see the Clawmaster, Topper.
Yeah.
We see Kalam, who is the next claw, and the Corporal and the Bridge Burners.
Oh, right.
And we see Dr. Younger, who is a claw, but not exactly. He's a claw insofar as he had claw training and he was part of the organization once, but he doesn't have any of the skills or personality that is attributed to claw. He's a scout. He has survivalist skills, but he doesn't have magic or assassination skills. He doesn't need them. So, Doc is a kind dude. He is funny. He is lighthearted. He's a good guy. And Ganos and Doc's relationship is genuine friendship. Until, poor Doc. Ganos and Topper, when they meet, Topper is very, I don't want to say arrogant, because it doesn't necessarily come off as arrogant, but he's very, he banters about things. He's
irreverent.
He takes everything not very seriously, but his reputation precedes him, because Ganos knows that he has killed virtually all of Unta's royal line. There is a scene where Topper says, "Oh, it is me. I am Topper. It is my hand that took down all of Unta's royal line, king, queen, sons and daughters." And then Ganos cuts in, and cousins, and second cousins, and third and Topper sets it down saying, yeah, I killed everyone, but you didn't answer my question. What was the question? Are you thirsty? He doesn't take the whole thing seriously. Unlike Lorn, who is very uptight, very cagey, very much like Surly, and what we see of her.
And, that's what I was about to say, and this is why Topper is not the adjunct. Lorn is Lassine's adjunct.
Which, to not digress too far, is an interesting note, because are adjuncts chosen because they are like the person they are the adjunct of, or are adjuncts molded to fit the person they have? But that's a discussion for a whole another time. We'll set that aside, and for the moment, we know what the answer for Lorn is. Lorn was not like this. Lorn was molded to be like this. And also Kalam, who's gruff, who is, but he also hates the organization and he abandoned it and he walked away. So
yeah, Kalam is sort of the exception. I mean, both Kalam and Talk are completely exceptional. They're not typical claws. The ones we actually see. Oh, you are forgetting another claw. The OG. Lassine is a claw.
Yeah, true. Lassine is the claw, not a claw. So, enough about that, about claws. Could you carry on? You were saying something about her reputation, I think?
Yeah, I was saying that most of what we see about Lorn, even though we get extensive POVs from, her inner monologues and her thoughts and impressions, whenever we see her from somebody else's point of view, it's always unequivocally, she is the Empress's will. She is a tool of the Imperial will. She is, a personal servant to Lassine. She's a cold-blooded killer who can, descend from anywhere and kill anyone at any time. She's a mage killer and, she has this solid reputation. It precedes her, just like Topper. Her reputation precedes her and no one really knows anything about the woman Lorn. It's always the adjunct Lorn, the mage killer, and all the other things precede her. And even when we actually meet her in Unta, we see her, living in this sparse apartment and not really as, as fun as Topper is.
Mm-hmm.
Or even her banter, even her talk with people is all extremely reserved. Because that's how she has been groomed, right? To just be a killer, to just be a tool. So that's one thing I wanted to touch upon. But then as we see her more in depth, we start exploring her humanity, right? And I think this is where Erikson has done a really good job, because it just keeps on ramping up. It's not like we see her in scene 1 being all cold-hearted and stuff like that, and then we see her slowly becoming human. It's not really like that, because even from scene 1 we see her struggling with her humanity. We see her, it's just not obvious. It's not in your face unless you're looking for it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Even that scene where she walks through the carnage and all, it's only now in hindsight we know that she has been through so much trauma that we can understand that scene has shaken her. It has left her shocked. But at that time, we really don't know. We just think she's cold and heartless, and she sees Paran, and for some reason, she takes him as her assistant and things like that. But if you really look at it, there is so much emphasis on her humanity and her sense of humor and the way, she tries to connect with Paran, with Tog, and especially with Tool. All the things, the discussion she has with Tool. Yeah, you have things to say about it, obviously. Go on.
Before I interrupt you, you said Tool a lot, okay?
I know, yes.
I want to say something is, what is the name of the Tlanimaster we come up against that Lorn is a companion of?
Onos Toolan.
And what does Lorn call him?
Tool.
And how is Tool? Because in the math language, the apostrophe is a glottal stop. So it would be Ulan. Tool doesn't necessarily come naturally from that. Onos would be a much more logical thing to call him. But she calls him Tool, for one, because it's probably more familiar to her. Because Onos isn't, Italian. She wouldn't say Onos in any Italian word.
Will she be talking Italian?
I think most Malazans speak Italian.
Okay, I've always had this doubt. So isn't there a separate Malazan language?
The language of the aristocracy that most Malazans and Fists use is Italian. The language overall is called Malazan, so I don't actually know if Malaz Isle has a specific language or not. I don't know.
Right, okay.
Anyway, the point is, Onos is a much more logical thing to call him because that's his first name, right? I mean, you don't make up a whole new name for someone without it having some certain significance. And she names him Tool. What does that reflect about Lorn's character? We discussed this already.
Did we now?
Yeah, we did. But it's a rhetorical question, not necessarily to you. There's also, what we haven't talked about yet is her name, Lorn.
Yeah.
Which,
yeah.
I already made a shitty pun once with for Lord, but...
I think we've all done that at some point.
Yeah. It's essentially synonym because Lorn means lonely and abandoned. And, surprise, she's lonely and abandoned. And she names Onos Toolan Tool. And there's also Sorry, who is possessed by a god who doesn't necessarily want to possess her. She'll do. He's not necessarily reluctant, but she's also being used as a tool. But she's not a tool, she's Sorry. And Lorn is alone, and lonely, and feels alone, because even when she's surrounded by people, like Ganos, her aide, or the people, or Tool, right, or the bridge burners, or One Iron's host, which she's attached to, or Tyson, or whomever, she still feels alone. Cheeky. And one last thing on names, Surly is very certainly Surly.
Yeah, she is. That's how she's introduced. She just comes with a cold... I mean, I don't have to preach you about Surly or Lassine, so you can just drop it here.
So that's the digression on names. Would you carry on?
Yes. So yeah, I was just saying that, there is so much emphasis on her humanity because that is a central conflict. That does the woman win over the adjunct or does the adjunct win over the woman? It could have gone either way and she makes the choice, right? But then I wouldn't blame her. Would you blame her? I would call her a victim here.
About what exactly?
Even though she releases Raist and releases a demon. And
I'll get to that later.
Yeah, we can get to that. But, I feel compassion for this character. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and another thing, she's quite competent, which, this is going to lead me into another long digression. Not a digression, but this is something which is, important to talk about. Right. Now, one thing, I think I've told you this many times before, that why did I pick up Malazan? So it was after reading some unnamed series with very questionable female characters, which left an extremely bitter taste in my mouth. And I was looking for something else. And that's when somebody suggested, not somebody, it's my friend. Yeah, he's probably listening to this. So he suggested that, pick up Malazan. It has like actual living, breathing woman characters. And, they're not just there to serve the male character's purpose and all that. So obviously I was very invested, and I've told you this. The moment Tattersail enters on the page, that's when I knew that this is a series I'm going to finish, right? So that was like chapter 1, chapter 2.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So keeping all that aside, Tattersail and Sorry and the way Lassine is portrayed and all that, Lorn really spoke to me.
Oh God.
Yeah.
If Lorn spoke to you, we have some trouble.
Right. Yeah, let's start questioning sanity now.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, okay. So Lorn, basically, her character, she's written really well. I don't know if you noticed it at all. But do you remember the scene where she removes her helmet and her long hair flows out? In any other book, you expect like a shampoo commercial, right? Her glossy auburn hair starts flowing in the wind and stuff like that. It's so beautiful that Erickson just puts it as in some stringy ropes of sweaty hair or something. And these are the things which I don't know. For me personally, I'm not talking about anyone else, but for me personally, these things matter. Because, she's not perfect. She's a soldier who is in a hot sun and roaming around, and there is no way in hell she's going to have glossy hair at the end of the day. And just a small thing, it means a lot. And these are the things. And then obviously she's not described in any detail compared to anyone else. None of the characters are really given much detail. So that's another huge plus point for me.
Mm-hmm.
And absolutely there was no romance. Do you know what an outlier this book is? You have like two 20-year-olds working together for a number of years and there is no romance.
There isn't just lack of romance. Canos, after the time skip from Ed Kokan to Ontar, whatever, very specifically says that Lorn molded him and chose him for her needs and then molded him. More specifically, he says she did what she does best.
Yeah, he landed in her lap as a lump of clay.
Yes,
and she proceeded to do what she does best. And did you, pick up any romance in that?
No.
So, but then this brings us to another extreme digression where, the one romance we see on the page is one of the worst written ones I've ever read. Not just in this series, in anywhere. So we're just going to skip over that, right? We're not going to talk about that. And another thing. So the Empress is obviously a woman and the Adjunct is another woman. And do you know how rare this type of a combination is? Unless a novel sets out to do something like a matriarchy or a completely women-led kingdom or something. Usually fantasy books don't do this. You don't get to see multiple women at the top. That was a refreshing change for me. And it was not like stressed out that, there is one woman serving another woman and there are so many women on the top and all that. It was never really, drawn attention to.
It just is. This is just how it is.
It's exactly. Nobody blinks an eye at that. And, obviously that was extremely refreshing for me, especially after reading the types of books I was reading at that time.
Which will not be named.
I will not know. Yeah, and another thing, she is portrayed as being extremely competent, both in sword fighting and in her politics. The way she deals with Taishran. Wasn't that a lovely scene? I think you wanted to touch upon that.
So, there is a specific scene in chapter 9. Not that one. We'll get to that one as well. But right before that one, Taishran and Lorn talk, yeah? I
don't think many people listening are going to remember chapter 9 as, it has that important scene followed by this other important scene, right? It's only us.
Fine. So there is a scene right before the dinner scene, which if you don't know what the dinner scene is, you probably didn't read the book. So you shouldn't be here. So Lorn specifically says that she talks directly from the Empress. So it's not her talking, it's the Empress talking. She says that because of Dujek's insinuations about, going against the will of the Empress, i.e. not allowing the purge at Pale to happen, of the nobles. And Taishran goes, Dujek is just one man, and he is the Emperor's man. And Lorn shuts it down completely. For one, he is loyal to the Empire. For two, he's not the leader of just one man, he's the leader of 10,000 men. And soon, those numbers will be inflated to 25,000 men. So, Lorn can, with relative ease, at the very least, without the responsibility bearing on her, because it's not her speaking, it's the Empress speaking, so she's absolved of responsibility. She can put down the Imperial High Mage like it's nothing. You just tell them to stand down. This is not what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to be rooting out traitors where traitors are not there. You're not supposed to be looking for needles in a haystack. Don't try and obliterate the high command that we have here. This is fine. It's working as it is. Don't try to be overzealous. Dujek is the best of the Empire, she says very specifically. And then Taishran just eventually relents and says, okay, I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm not good at this. I should stop. And this is when the audience cues in, like, no shit, you should stop. You're being an idiot. But, And for the first time in a while, we actually seem to agree with Lorn and her view of the bridge burners, because remember, Tyson is there also on behalf of Lacine, and Tyson very clearly seems to have it out for the bridge burners and the mage gatherer that he also had, because he killed, He killed Nightchill and I think Belurdan, was it? I don't remember the names.
Yeah, Nightchill, Belurdan, Acheronis.
Right, 3 guys then. And Tattersill doesn't like him, the bridge burners don't seem to like him, Quickpen is trying to evade him, and so on and so forth. So there is a very clear notion that Tyson is not just going above his station in the cog of the bureaucracy, but he's acting on Lacine's will. This is what Lacine wants, for some reason.
Yeah.
Lorn, speaking on behalf of the Empress, shuts down this idea that, no, I am the will of the Empress, I speak for the Empress, you will do what I say, stop doing this.
Yeah.
Which, for one, in this regard, Lorn is acting as a mirror, a dark mirror, because she's not the prettiest picture, but a dark mirror for Lacine, since they're very similar. It is almost as if Lacine is there speaking to her underling. She's that imperious. She owns the scene. Lorn walks in and you can't help but look at her, even though she's nondescript. She wears a helmet that covers basically all her hair. She wears a sword that's plain as hell, except for the fact that it's lateral. She's young, and yet she commands people like it's nothing. And she shows genuine appreciation for the people under her. She doesn't hate Paran. She doesn't take Paran because, this is a punishment of being an arrogant piece of shit.
Can we quickly digress on Ganos, please?
Yes, go on.
And then we'll come back to this, because, oh my god, he is such a tool. He's the 3rd tool in this book, and I can't stand him now. I was just going through Gardens for this episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's pretty arrogant and, frankly obnoxious in most of his scenes.
He's a noble son, and it shows, doesn't it?
And he behaves exactly like that. Yeah, true. Because, but this time when I was reading, and I was like, everyone is being nice to him, from Topper to that captain to Lorn, everyone, and he finds a way to be, horrid to them. So, yeah, sorry, that my digression is over.
For instance, to continue the digression, for instance, in Nitko Khan, when Lorn appears and asks the captain for stuff, he's like, so your report, Captain, etc. And then the captain calls Lieutenant Garrus Paran, who is a noble, and he's 20, and he should not be a lieutenant right now, but,
Yeah.
Calls him up, and Lorn asks him about a few things, and then he says something along the lines of, I'm expecting a cozy station in the capital, while they're wading through bodies. And Lorn is visibly shook. Ganos is a bit incensed because he's been doing this for hours. And he says so himself, but at that point in time, he's just being a dipshit. A disrespectful dipshit.
He is. And even with Tavor, just remember that scene with his sister? She just asks him so politely, she's just inquiring. So are you back here for long? I thought you were in Itko Khan and stuff. And he just says, are you trying to see whether your investment has paid out? How can anyone stand him in his house? I don't know. Sorry, yeah, now can we end the digression?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, unless you have anything more.
I have a lot of things to say about Ganos, but we're gonna go on too long, so I'm just not gonna bother.
Yeah.
Also, he names his sword like shit. I'm just gonna say that. Chance is a horrible name. That's all. Moving on.
But then that was a plot point.
It is, but it's a terrible name.
Did you guess the name? I think it's not told explicitly for a long time in the book. Did you happen to guess it?
No.
Yeah, I thought it was named Luck or something. My friend made me guess most of the things, he would keep asking.
I think it was first brought up when he died and Opon made a deal with the God of Death.
Yeah.
And it's why are you doing this? Well, we took interest in your sword. And what? What sword? Yeah, it's named Chance. And I'm just oh my god, is this seriously what's happening? Anyway.
Yeah, the name is told, I think, a bit later. It doesn't matter. We can do a separate Ganos episode and,
okay.
It will be just one-sided.
Alright, okay. Yeah. I think the next up is the dinner scene, like I've mentioned. So, do you want to get to that?
The dinner scene? The one where Tattersill comes all hot?
Yes.
So, this dinner scene, I vividly remember when I read it for the first time. And, it was beyond me. I couldn't understand that how the hell is, so many good things happening in this one scene. And I was so conflicted. I know Tattersill. I love Tattersill. She's been, so on the side of good all throughout. She has been nice to everyone and she feels guilt over all the deaths that have happened under her watch and all that. And, obviously we are with Tattoosail till that scene. And then you see Lorn, and oh my god, it was extremely sad for me. And, everything changes about Lorn in that scene, right? We repeatedly keep getting the word childhood and a child's voice and a child's memory and things like that. It's very evocative. It's very sad. And it was sort of cruel on Dujak's part to shut her down like that and say that, you're not the woman here and you're here on behalf of the Empress and this is not the way we deal with things. And, Tattoosail is an asset and you can't just, execute her or challenge her to a one-sided duel and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that whole chapter, it really, I had to sit up and take notice when I read it. So...
during the aftermath of the scene, after everything happens, and then they all start back down and start talking again, Tok actually mentions a few things about his life as a claw. And he mentions specifically that his life as a soldier of the Second Army, is particularly destructive to his claw training, because in the claw, he was trained to disregard feeling. He says, the years in the claw where feeling and caring had been systematically assailed, those years failed to withstand the day in, day out reality that was the Second Army.
Right, yeah.
And so we get a glimpse through Tok of what Lorn must have endured. We see very directly what Lorn endured because she says so in the scene. Her parents and brother are dead. She's confronted with the killer of her family. And insofar as her capacity allows, as the adjunct, she cannot act on this. She should not act on this. And in this, the woman, as we mentioned earlier, that is Lorn, shows up. And I have a quote for this.
Yes, please.
So, Lorn says that the trial and execution of Tattoosail is an acceptable punishment. And Dujak sets her down and says, I have not forgot your rank. If it is your will that those within the Empire who have committed crimes in the Emperor's name must be executed, then you must include me. Indeed, I believe High Mage Tyshren also has his share of horror committed on the Emperor's behalf. And finally, there is the Empress herself to consider. Lysine, after all, commanded the Emperor's claw. She created it, in fact. More, the edict was hers, thankfully short-lived as it was. And presumably, since Lorn doesn't really bat an eye at this, she knows, she knew, but she doesn't care. So, Tyshren, before I get to Tyshren, Dujak actually says something first, before Tyshren, is that all the adjunct does, all that she says, is on behalf of Empress Lysine. She says to Lorn later that you are here as Lysine's voice, as her will. And then before Lorn can respond, Tyshren chimes in and says, the woman named Lorn, the woman who once was a child, who once had a family, he looked upon the adjunct with anguish in his eyes. That woman does not exist. She ceased to exist the day she became the adjunct. And Lorn is completely dumbfounded at this and just is numbed, is stunned, because both Dujak and Tyshren are legends of the Empire. They're not just some buggers. Dujak is a high fist and Tyshren is the Imperial High Mage. They know their shit. They serve the Empire in the same capacity that she does. And they, right now, are acting in the capacity that they role. They're acting in the capacity of their role. So, if we are to judge Lorn on her actions as the adjunct, we should also judge these two men, not on their character, but on the fact that they are High Fist Dujak and Imperial High Mage Tyshren, and not Tyshren and Dujak one-on.
Yeah.
But these words aren't just directed at the adjunct. They're also directed at the woman beneath the adjunct. And so, Tok says, or rather thinks, because refuting the scene to Tok's perspective, that he had just witnessed an execution. I think you remember this quote.
Yeah.
The woman named Lorn had risen from the turgid mists, I love that word, turgid mists of the past, risen to right a wrong, to fight justice, and in that last act reclaim its life. And she had been denied, not by the words of Dujak or Tyshren, but by the thing known as the adjunct. End quote. So, this is obviously the pivotal point, the changing point of Lorn's character, because we see what her deal is, we see why she's the way she is, we understand, we know, and we just witnessed the last shred of personality that she has just get obliterated, right? The word thing to describe the adjunct is very deliberate, because, as Dujak says, the adjunct acts on behalf of the Empress. She's essentially the Empress's mouthpiece. She's not there to do what she thinks is good. She's there to do what the Empress thinks is good. and proper. So, you said already you were surprised that so many good things could fit, and you mentioned Tattersail, how much you like Tattersail. Did your perception change at all after this?
I mean, not really, because, I had to reconcile with both, right? Like, both of them had their own, their own realities. They did what they deemed best at that point in time. So, I couldn't really, I generally don't, but at least here I couldn't pick a side. I couldn't say that, Tattersail was so horrible and Lorn should have been protected and all that, because things were happening beyond their control. But one thing which I really remember is, that shifting dynamic of Tattersail somewhat immediately challenging Lorn to that duel.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, wow, she's going to do something. And then that's when, because we obviously, we don't know, and Tox remembers that she has a noted sword, and that means that Tattersail is just going to be cut down. Like, there's no chance she's going to survive. And then you see that Tattersail knows this. So her brave offer of a challenge is basically her offering to get executed. She's like asking to be executed, and all those shifting things, like in a line or two, everything changes, right? Your whole perspective kept changing. That whole scene is excellent. So that's all I wanted to add about that.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned that, this is when we see her execution and, the woman Lorn is dead and all that. But I personally feel that she keeps coming back. This woman character is too strong to be shut down by just this one scene with just these two people telling her that she should not exist. Because you keep seeing her struggling, right? Even when she goes to release the tyrant, when she goes with Tool, she has a lot of misgivings. I mean, Tool even asks her, right? You've been wearing a frown for 2 days. Is that significant? So she does have some conflict. She struggles. She knows that she's up to no good. Releasing this tyrant is not necessarily a good thing to do. But, she feels compelled to keep doing it. And, among all the people in Gardens who struggle with this type of, morality and whether we are doing good or bad, only a few people stand out to me. Like, one is Tattersail, because, from the beginning we see her struggling with her feelings of guilt. So she blames herself. She takes upon all guilt of anyone who dies anywhere near her. Tattersail just ends up feeling guilty over it. So we see her struggling with that. And then we see Whiskey Jack struggling with Sorry's character. He almost wishes that, it's better if she's possessed, because...
No. He doesn't almost wish. He says explicitly that he would much prefer it if Sorry was just a product of a terrible lifetime.
Right.
Because he understands that. Because he gets it. Because that's how he is. He didn't become a soldier because he wanted to. He had a bad lifetime and a bad upbringing and just ended up like this. And he imagines that Sorry would be similar. Because Sorry in this book is fucking brutal. But he would understand if it was just bad childhood. It's not.
Yeah. So he can't comprehend such an evil being possessing her. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, I think I got it the other way. Right, so these are the only few people who, stop to think about good or bad. Am I missing anyone? I
don't know.
No, because obviously most of it is, taken up by Lorn. Sort of. She keeps wondering, is this the thing she has to do? And that hilltop scene where she just slices through Cole, Crocus, Krupp, everyone. It was just brutality for the sake of it, right? Even she was not aware of why she was fighting those people. And Crocus just had to say, we mean no harm, please stop. And then she just stops and says, okay, all right. And then she goes away. And then she basically has a lot of regret over that. Like, she keeps wondering, what had snapped in her and why did she even attack them when, she could have just used her words. She was just surprised that she immediately went to her sword. And it's not like she reacted instantly and then forgot about it, because she struggles with it and we see her struggling with it. So I don't know. She is one of the few people who actively thinks about their actions.
Who among the main cast that we see doesn't actually seem to actively struggle with what they're doing?
Ganos? Does he struggle with anything?
Ganos is one thing. I was thinking of Whiskey Jack and Fiddler. What's their plan to take over the Rajasthan?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, please go on.
Do they have a second thought about it? No. They are given a plan and they deem it to be suicidal. So they're like, okay, we're going to mine a central intersection of a big city, probably the biggest in the whole continent, at least insofar as we know, during a festival. And the only reason they don't go through with it is because they later learn that there's gas beneath the city, and if they actually blow those mines up, then that city's going to go up in flames and kill them. They don't go through with the plan out of a sense of self-preservation. Not out of morality. No, they don't even consider the morality of their actions. They don't care. They're soldiers. But Lorn does.
Yeah, can I just mention, I am listening to this other podcast, right? These two new guys who are reading Gardens one chapter a week.
Mm-hmm.
So I think somewhere around this point, maybe chapter 16 or 15 or somewhere around that, and they actually question, are these Malazans bad guys? Because honestly, at that point in time, I was not questioning. I think it took me maybe another book or two.
Who is the bad guy in the story?
No, in the sense you're just rooting for Whiskey Jack, right? I mean, come on, Whiskey Jack is so charming. You're just going to go along with whatever he does. At least that's what I was doing. And I didn't really stop to question that, what exactly are these guys doing? They're quite horrible then.
Which also raises the question of, who is the villain in the story?
In this book or the series?
This book.
The villain is presumably Raised, the big villain.
Mm-hmm. Who else is there?
The other one is obviously Cotillion.
And by proxy, Sorry, yes?
Sorry is not the villain. No. How would you call her the villain?
I said by proxy.
Yeah, but...
Well, Cotillion is acting through Sorry. So Sorry is the villain by proxy. So until Sorry becomes Absala, insofar as Sorry is still possessed, she is quote-unquote the villain. Or I should say the antagonist. Because the other antagonist in this book is Rake. But, everyone loves Rake. Rake's cool. He's 7 foot tall with a big fuck-off sword.
Rake? What did Rake do? Come on. No,
Rake is an antagonist because he actively goes against the Malazan Siege of Pale and then Darujistan.
He goes against the occupying Malazan forces. How does it make him a bad guy?
I didn't say bad guy. I said antagonist.
Oh, that's why you changed the phrase and made it antagonist. Fine. Okay.
And the other antagonist is Lorn.
By extension, you can say Lasine.
Yes and no, because Lasine is obviously present through Lorn, but Lasine is also far away, and she's not acting directly. And we don't see Lasine's inner conflict, because presumably there is none. We only see Lorn's inner conflict about what she's doing. Lorn's an antagonist because her plan includes releasing the big bad, right?
Yeah.
Release Race to go destroy Darujistan and kill Rake. Which, by the way, they're not actually planning to kill Rake with Race. They're planning that Rake will kill Race and then they'll kill him. Which is ridiculous to think about.
To weaken him. They're so sure that he's not going to die.
Anyway.
No, but can I just stop you there? Because, we all know Anamander Rake is that high-powered. And do you know who has balls enough to go and take him alone by himself?
Ganos?
Teshran.
Oh, yeah.
He just launches attacks on Moonspawn and, makes him withdraw.
Is it balls or is it overconfidence?
I'm not sure about his ability, at least at this book. But, he did it. He actually did that.
But that's a digression.
Please carry on.
Anyway, let's analyze this a bit more. So, Sorry does not have agency. Because Sorry is possessed by Cotillion. Race is dead. And Race is a tyrant.
I think we have discussed this before and, we didn't really agree that he was dead. I would say he was in some sort of suspended animation.
Okay, Race is in suspended animation. And Race is a tyrant. So Race is bad by nature, sort of. Bad by nature for the purposes of this book. Rake is an antagonist, but he's not a bad person. He's just against the Malazans, and that's it. Because he wants to be free, and he wants Darujistan to be free. The only person that we see make choices, sort of, I'll get to that in a minute, is Lorn. And the big question I want to tackle before I get to my interpretation is, do you think, in your opinion, that Lorn has agency as a character?
I didn't watch that video. Did you watch it?
What?
I think AP had a video on this. Did you watch it? I didn't see that.
No, I have no idea.
Really? I think that was the title of the video, about agency.
Did he actually?
Yeah, that was the title.
God damn it, I look like an idiot now. I look like a tool. No.
You must have seen it.
I did not. I would remember.
Right.
Oh my god, no.
So that was the exact word he used.
No. Tell me it's not so. Okay, hang on.
I think it's in the wiki references actually. Where's my phone?
Oh my god.
Right?
Oh.
Yeah?
Okay, so apparently it's part of critical conversations and I don't watch those. Not yet.
Yeah.
So he talks about this with Steven and agency and stuff. Is Lorn brought up in this? I don't know. God damn it.
I'm sorry. Yeah, take some time.
Whatever. I'm gonna... Okay, I guess we're gonna take a break here because Lee's devastated and needs to rethink his entire thing. So we'll be right back in a second.
Are you taking a commercial break?
So, do we take off from where we started? From where we left off, rather?
Yeah, but try to keep the disappointment out of your voice.
Okay. So, do you believe, in your opinion, that Lorn was the master of her own actions? Did she have a choice in what she did?
Yeah, I think she did. In spite of all her struggles and all that, ultimately, she did it knowingly, right? She wasn't compelled, sorry or anything. She made her choice. She knew the consequences and she still acted upon it. So, would that count? What do you think?
Can you elaborate on this? You mentioned she had a choice and she did it anyway. Did she have a choice originally? You mentioned sorry. You brought up sorry, that she's not possessed like sorry is. We know sorry is absolved of blame. Lorn actually mentions this, that because she's the will of the Empress, it absolves her of blame, that she's not acting on behalf of the woman, she's acting on behalf of the Adjunct, and the Adjunct is acting according to what the Empress says. So, I'm not to be held liable for anything I do.
That's what she tells herself. That, she's absolved of responsibility.
This is always like the... So this is the classic argument of good soldiers follow order, right? I think a certain YouTuber has, on regards to morality, has mentioned that he does not really believe in this argument. So I won't bring it up again, that good soldiers follow orders. But I want to actually touch upon a few more things. Do you have anything more to add? Because we see Lorn, you brought up sorry, we see Lorn constantly make what appear to be choices. Right, because she had a choice. She could release haste, or she could not do that, But we also see the Brisbaneers have a choice to not blow up Darujistan, And we don't judge them harshly. So, do you have any more thoughts, or can I get the long ramble about this whole thing?
I want you to start your ramble. I'm waiting. Go on.
Okay. Alright. This is gonna be a mess.
Oh, come on.
Forgive my philosophical tendencies. How did... Now, his name is either pronounced Juranur or Uranur. I am sorry if it's the second one and I'm pronouncing it wrong. I'm pronouncing it Juranur forever.
But he's German. I'm sure it's the second one.
Maybe it is. I don't know. I was just pronouncing it wrong the whole time, maybe. Anyway. So, they brought up when I made a certain essay about philosophy and the philosophical ramifications of a certain character. And a certain YouTube comment, which I forgot from where it was, and I cannot give a shout out to that fellow, but they sent me down a pretty deep rabbit hole about philosophy. And I stumbled upon a certain thing named Hegelianism and the master-slave dialectic. Now, in very abstract terms, because I don't understand it, I'm not going to pretend I understand. I don't get it. I don't know what it means. I'm not sure exactly how to interpret it. This is how I understood part of it, because it's not even the entire thing. So, this interpretation is based on a myth that Hegel brings up in his book, The Phenomenology of Spirit, which is an 18th century philosophy book from Germany. So, completely foreign to me is what I mean. I have no idea. So, in it, he discusses the attainment of what he calls spirit, which is essentially knowledge, absolute knowledge. And he argues that for someone to attain spirit, they must first be self-conscious. Now, in Hegel's philosophy, for someone, the self cannot realize itself. One cannot attain self-consciousness without engaging with someone else. So if you're alone, the only conscious being in the universe, you can never be self-conscious according to Hegel. Okay? So to elaborate on his concept, to make it more well understood to people, he spun a myth. A myth using as abstract terms as possible to make it general but also digestible. Now, this is what I took away from the myth. I advise you to look it up and try to understand what you think to yourself. But the gist of the myth is two human beings who have not met anything else conscious before meet one another. And the first stage of the meeting is reaction, in which they gauge each other. Because something else in this universe, this alone darkness, this vast nothing, is conscious. And they look at one another and they gauge each other. And then to perhaps describe the inner conflict of the people who try and attain this, Hegel describes a fight to the death, a struggle to the death. Now, in Hegel's philosophy, To move on from this stage, the struggle ends with a clear victor and a clear defeated party. The winning party essentially forces its will on the defeated one and becomes its master. And the other party, for fear of dying, because it will die if it doesn't consents to being a slave. Now, this is a preparatory stage, it's a mid-stage, it's a midpoint. Neither the master nor the slave are self-conscious. They're not fully fledged people yet. Now, to get out of that situation, they must engage in certain things, which Hegel details. I don't understand. I'm not going to bother. How does all of this connect to Lorn? We mentioned earlier that Lorn has two sides of her personality, the adjunct and the woman. Now, maybe if Lorn was luckier, perhaps, the woman would be subject to the adjunct. She would be pushed down. She would be repressed. But that's not what's happening here. When Lorn became the adjunct, she had to kill that part of herself. And yes, sometimes it resurfaces and then is killed again. Because every single time that she resurfaces and the adjunct and the woman enter this conflict, a struggle to the death, there is no submission. The struggle to the death is final. Now, in Hegel's philosophy, if one of the two parties dies, it's considered to be a failure because neither party, one is dead, so they don't care, but the other party, who is alive, cannot continue because they don't have someone else to engage with to attain self-consciousness. How does it relate to Lorn, as I said? Because the adjunct is not a fully fledged person. The woman is not a fully fledged person. Lorn, because she killed the woman, cannot be a fully fledged person. Now, granted, she has other engagements with other people. There is an implication that she kind of, quote-unquote, enslaves Ganos with what he says earlier about he fell into her lap like a clay ball and she shaped him. But Ganos breaks away without engaging with Lorn. He breaks away because, he has chance and he becomes a pawn of another god. So to take away one slave does not make the master grow. She has engagement with Tool, but her engagement with Tool is so different, she can't reasonably grow from that. And this, of course, this can also be applied to Lacine, to which she is subservient, as the adjunct. In all of those cases, Lorn has not grown into a fully conscious person. If she had grown, for example, in that dinner scene, she may have realized what has happened to her, what Lacine has done to her, what she is currently doing. She would have self-awareness, self-consciousness, to realize that her actions are not just morally wrong, but they're not what she would do, what Lorn would do. Everything we see from the dinner scene onward is the adjunct's doing. And whenever the woman resurfaces, she is killed brutally. She is repressed, because Lorn says this in chapter 16, I think it is, that the woman Lorn keeps resurfacing and interfering with her mission. And she cannot allow that. She can't have that. So, in my view, while it's not as absolute as Cotillion, it is very obvious that Thor is there, among other reasons, to act as a mirror for Lorn and Lacine. Lacine does not possess Lorn in the original sense, but she has brainwashed her, she has indoctrinated her, she has made of her a weapon, she has made of herself, Lacine has made of herself, someone that Lorn must depend on, because she has nothing else, because all she has is the Empress, to whom she is subservient to, as the adjunct. So, does Lorn have a choice? Does Lorn have understanding of what she's doing, and a fully fledged sense of morality? We, as readers, would like to say yes, because we like to see things in black and white. And say, yes, she knew what she was doing, she had a choice, she took a choice, she's bad. She knew what she was doing was bad, and that's it. She took it, happens, right? We're not ready to accept just how far down the indoctrination of the claw goes. We, like Whiskey Jack, would understand, well, unlike Whiskey Jack, the opposite of Whiskey Jack, would understand if Lorn was possessed by something and had to do this. Because, well, it's magic. We don't understand it, but we can accept it. In this case, when someone is indoctrinated to the degree of doing things they know to be wrong, but not comprehending what they're doing, in the sense that she comprehends what she's doing, but she cannot perceive it from a moral sense, because her sense of morality is skewed. Because when she wonders, why did I attack them? What snapped within me? Well, Skoll and Murillo and all the others. What snapped within me? What did I do? Why did I do that? She doesn't come to a conclusion of, I shouldn't have done it. It's bad. Moves on. Continues with her mission. When she goes to release Raised, she is obviously, it's very obvious, conflicted. But she carries on with her mission. At every point during which the part of her self-consciousness threatens to appear, threatens to emerge, she pushes it down and kills it. Is that a choice she makes consciously? I think you may agree with me in that no, it isn't. She's not consciously killing the... She did in the dinner scene. When the dinner scene and Tattletale came up and said, and Dujek and Tyson told her to stand down, then yes, she made the conscious decision of, I should stop this. I should reassert myself as the adjunct. But from then on, she believes, for all she knows, that she has killed the woman again. And I just don't think, I cannot convince myself that she is willingly doing it over and over again. The adjunct has once again asserted herself as a dominant consciousness, if you will, within Lorn. And all her actions, viewed by that lens, make sense, because she's the adjunct of the Empress and she's following orders, and she just does not have the necessary moral understanding and the not necessary agency. I said the bad word. She does not have the necessary agency to make the different choice. She physically can't. That's my take on things. That, also, side note, that is a good example of a morally grey character written.
Yeah, it is.
Not just because her morals are grey in the sense that, okay. But also, what if she doesn't comprehend morality? What if her morality is so skewed because of outside influence that she can't comprehend morality the way we do? Can we still blame her the same way? This, I think, falls under moral relativism, which I will not touch on because that is a very sensitive can of worms that I am wholly unqualified to talk about. So I think that's it. That is my take on if Lorn has agency and a choice. And does she have choices? Yes. Can she take those choices? Probably not. So if we're arguing, does Lorn have a choice? The answer is yes. Yeah, she can not release Raised. She can leave. But can Lorn take that choice? Can Lorn make that choice? I don't think so.
Yeah, I would agree with that. In the sense that the way we see her choices is from our position. And we are not the ones who are brainwashed, and we are not the ones who are, been under Lassine's thumb for all these years. So we perceive that she has a choice, but, ultimately she really doesn't.
I wouldn't say she really... I think that's my interpretation.
The one thing which I feel, it's, which I would disagree is that even after the dinner scene, the woman Lorn keeps threatening to come up, right? And I believe that she consciously shuts it down each time because she cannot let that thing happen again. She is quite shaken by that incident. She did not imagine that just the name Tattletale would bring up all these repressed childhood memories and, make her lose control of the situation. She totally lost control, right? If Dujek and... Yeah?
Side note, which the name Tattletale awakens memories in Lorn, like the word seer awakens memories in Sori.
Yeah. Beautiful analogy. Correct.
In case you haven't noticed that there's obviously an analogy to be made there.
I did not make that connection. Thank you. Right. So I believe that because she lost control there and she does not want to allow the woman Lorn to come up again. She consciously shuts it down each time, and that's what makes her worse and worse. She can't handle it because till that time she thought she was in control. She thought she was just the adjunct and there was no conflict within her. Later on in the series we see a lot of such characters, right, with much more inner conflicts. But here it's quite simple and quite, easily laid out. Her conflict is quite on the surface, but still she struggles with it, and I feel she shuts it down each time consciously. It's not something that just happens, I feel. Mm-hmm. It's not happenstance.
So all of that, all of the setup, parallels with Sori, her agency or lack thereof, choices, her inner conflict. How does this culminate?
She becomes the great hero who defeats Darujistan and conquers it for the Empress and returns to Unta in victory, right? Isn't it what happens?
Right.
Yeah, I know.
So, to bring up that article again, because it's a great article, I insist, there is a parallel made between when Sorry approaches Crocus to kill him under continual possession, and when Lorn approaches Crocus to kill him. And on one hand, we have Sorry, who is possessed, and at the same time, by the way, out on the plains, Anomanda and Shadowthrone are talking, and Rick is threatening Shadowthrone to get the rope out of Sorry.
Yeah.
And that's one time Crocus is saved by divine intervention, or some variant thereof. And the other time, well, there's also Sarat, which chases him down, and Cowl stops her.
Okay, can I just mention? Because Crocus, I think his whole deal is that he's saved like an unnatural number of times because he's the coin bearer. Like it's extremely obvious in your face. The coin becomes hot, so he bends down and an arrow shoots over his head. He's saved. It just happens to an extreme, absurd number of times. But that is Opon's intervention. Yeah, go on, please.
And so, how does Sorry end up after that? Crocus looks at her, and he sees a lost. And Crocus sees Sorry, and eventually they come to the conclusion that Sorry is actually, an amnesiac, a lost memory.
Yeah.
And he gives her a new name, and they live happily ever after, or not. But anyway, care to remind everyone what happens when Lorn jumps on Crocus?
Actually, I don't remember. Doesn't Cowl come?
No.
Blues
does.
Sorry, yeah, I keep confusing between the two. So Blues from Crimson Guard, whom I did not remember when I read Goddess of the Moon for the first time. So Blues comes in and, even without magic, he's able to beat her back. She's not dead because Lorn is quite good actually, but she's severely beaten and
wounded.
Even at that point you think, she's going to survive.
And bleeding.
Yeah, you believe that, somebody's going to find her and she's going to be fine. But yeah, we have these Eels agents, right, who kill her to protect the coin bearer. So it's really sad. This Mies and Iralta, we hardly even see them throughout the book. They're just some small minions. And she's left to bleed to death on the side of the road.
And do you remember what her last words were?
So she tells something to Paran because he's the one who finds her.
Mm-hmm.
So, what does she say? I wish you'd come early. Or, I don't know. What does she say, please?
Hang on.
Yeah.
Let me find the quote.
You have to find it.
So, she doesn't even bother to tell him that she wished they would have come early.
Mm-hmm.
She says, they have killed me. Who? She managed to stay and smile. I don't know. 2 women. Looked like thieves. Thugs. Do you see the irony, Ganner's parent? Thin-lipped, he nodded. No glorious end for the Adjunct. If he'd come a few minutes sooner. Nothing would have changed because Lorn's bleeding out and she's immune to Null magic. So, if he'd come a few minutes sooner, he would probably watch her die and feel bad about it. But we know that Ganon just kind of shrugs it off, goes to bury her, like, oh well, that happened.
There's a very similar saying. She thinks to herself when she meets Tool. She figures out that he's clanless and that's the reason he's been selected to free the tyrant for her. And she realizes that he was chosen specifically because he doesn't have a clan. And so even if he's enslaved by the tyrant, it cannot reach the rest of his clan. They'll all be safe. And so he's purely expendable. And the next moment she realizes, so am I. Right? So they're both tools, expendable tools. All this is just, like I said, it's quite sad. It's a sad story for Lorn.
And if you notice, in her dying words, one of the very few times, I don't actually know how many times, but it's not a lot, I would remember it, that Lorn refers to herself by her title.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't say, no glory sent for me. She doesn't say, no glory sent for Lorn. She says, no glory sent for the Adjunct.
Yeah.
Because she is acting in the capacity of the Adjunct. Because this is not Lorn that is acting like this. This is not Lorn releasing trace. This is not Lorn doing everything she's doing. She has swept away doubt. She has swept away... Well, not she. The scene has swept away her doubt. She has washed away all emotion, all feeling, all care that she might have had. All of it that was there has been buried beneath the title of Adjunct. And it resurfaces. We see it resurface a few times. We mentioned it already. But at the end, when she goes to this race and when she dies, when she almost kills Crocus. And one must think that when she goes to kill Crocus, she sees her chance at freedom.
Oh, freedom?
Her task will be done. She did what she wanted. She did what she was tasked to do. She released the tyrant. She killed the coin bearer. She can leave. She can go back. With all these new revelations about Tethersail, about her family, about the Empress, she can maybe go back and maybe. This is speculation mostly because this was never going to happen. But maybe. I don't want to say she can change. I don't want to say change. Change is a big word. But she could grow. Because, like I said earlier, about all that rambling about conflict and the struggles to the death and the masters and slaves, if Lorn had something more to engage with, if Lorn had more people around her, other than Lacine or other claws that are devoid of emotion or purpose, if Lorn was not acting in the capacity of the adjunct whenever she was deployed to the field, maybe she could grow. Maybe she could become a very interesting character indeed. Instead, we are left with a very interesting character, but a very static character, like I said in the beginning, in that she doesn't grow. She is very interesting on her own right. I mean, I like this kind of character. You like this kind of character. But she doesn't grow. She doesn't go anywhere. And when she bleeds out and she dies, she's virtually the same character that she was when we met her in Chapter 1 of Flight of the Moon.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I could have it any other way.
Really? You wouldn't want to see her join Tool? Because Tool he asks her to join him. Because he's going somewhere else in search of some truth. He invites her to join him. Wouldn't you want to see that? Because we know where Tool's journey takes him. But no, I see what you mean.
So, if you have nothing more to add, I think there is one more point of contention here. Because I've not talked about Lacine enough today.
Are you? Oh my god, I was feeling so happy that we've not brought her up much today.
No. Just one small thing.
Yeah, go on.
We go all the way back to the beginning.
To Moxhold?
Not that far back. How does Gardens of the Moon start?
What, at Moxhold? With a poem? The epigraph?
The poem, yes.
Are you sure you want to bring this up?
Yes. The Emperor is dead. So too is his right hand, now cold, now severed. And from Dramatis Personae, we know that the Emperor's second, Dancer, was identified as his chief advisor. And then assassinated by Lacine. Lorn is identified as adjunct to the Empress, right?
Yeah.
So this raises the obvious question of, is the right-hand man of the Emperor equivalent to the adjunct to the Empress? And the answer is obviously no. Because we know from rumors and from, poems and epigraphs and the way people talk about it, that the Emperor and Dancer were not very, I don't want to say not very sane, but they were also not in this rigid relationship. The adjunct and the Empress. They were just close. Dancer was an advisor to Kellenberg. Dancer was not a tool to be used and then disposed of. Dancer was not expendable. Lorn most definitely is. Useful, yes, absolutely. She would have remained useful even after this book, even if she didn't die. But she is also expendable. She is a tool. She is not the right-hand woman of the Empress. She is her adjunct. And it's an important distinction to make, because the roles, despite basically being the same, second in command, are very different.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add?
Lorn is not that. I completely agree. Lorn is a minion, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have anything more to add on her?
I don't think I have anything more to add about Lorn specifically. I have a few thoughts on Gardens of the Moon, but that's better to say for other times. Isn't Lorn the one to deliver the payment to Vorkan to destroy the... Was
it Lorn?
Cabal in the Rudistan? I don't know, I'm asking you.
I'm not sure. I don't think it's her. But the rumor is spread, that's all. The Assassin's Guild come to know that they'll be given money, but I'm not sure who is supposed to do the actual payments. Could be Topper. Everyone has warrants. I'm not sure. So final thoughts. Who died on the roadside? The woman or the adjunct?
Is that even a question?
Yeah.
Pretty obvious that the woman died, no?
Because, I'm asking because I feel the woman died long ago. And all that died there on the roadside was this thing called adjunct.
Oh, you mean that roadside? I thought you meant the road on Itkukan.
Oh.
No. No.
Yeah.
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that if anyone were to die before Lorn actually died, obviously it will be the woman because she represses her. You said she actively does it, she consciously does it. I said it doesn't, but the point is she kills the woman every time it resurfaces.
Yeah.
Every time her self-consciousness speaks, her sense of morality speaks, she pushes it down.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that I think she could have grown. Maybe, big maybe, if she accompanied to, like I said, or if she went back to Unta or something. But she doesn't, and all that there is left to her in that point is the Adjunct, and she confirms so herself, that there is no glorious end for the Adjunct, because the woman's dead.
Can we wind up at this? I can sense that we have nothing more to add.
Yeah, I mean, we're mostly done, right? She dies, it's poignant, it's sad, it's tragic, and above all, it feels pointless.
It's pointless. I completely agree, yeah. We see so many pointless deaths throughout, so this is one of the first ones.
Yeah, like I said in the beginning, when you asked me what I think about Lorn, is this first death that I felt, this is not going to be that kind of series. My favorite characters are not going to survive simply because I like them. And if you haven't read past this point, good luck.
It's called Book of the Fallen. I think that should count.
Yeah. It should have included me in.
Yeah.
But when Ganos dies and it comes back like, it's going to be more of a light-hearted series. Except, no, it isn't.
No, that's what I'm saying. We're just rambling. I think we can, do the outro. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed. So that was our discussion about the Adjunct Lorn versus the woman Lorn. And thank you for your time, Lee.
Thank you for listening to me ramble again. This is becoming a trend in episodes, I think.
Can you not say that you're rambling each time we do this? Because
I did, though. It was. I'm just glad that someone enjoys my rambles, and someone's actually willing to listen, more importantly. So, yeah. There's a lot to talk about these books. So, thank you for listening. And I think we'll talk again soon. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
So, have a great day. Or rest of your day. Or morning or evening or whenever you're listening to this, actually. Thank you, Mora.
Thank you, Lee.